Hello and welcome to the 1 year anniversary of the Soulful Valley podcast. And today we've got a very special uh, episode. Today I've asked one of my previous guests from series 1 to come and interview me for a change. So welcome, Katische.
Thank you, Katie, and congratulations. Happy birthday for the podcast.
Thank you. It's exciting, isn't it? It's flown by. I can't believe how quickly it's gone.
I'm flabbergasted it's been a year already. Absolutely amazed that 1 year of your life goes just like that, doesn't it?
I've loved every minute of it as well. So,
Well,
yeah,
congratulations on Soulful Valley podcast's first birthday.
thank you.
And thank you for inviting me to ask you some questions. Let's turn the table and
Yeah.
ask you some questions about your journey. So let's go back in time. Before you started Soulful Valley, we had to come up with a seed of an idea. Now, not everybody in the world sits there and thinks, oh, I might just start a podcast. I mean, there are a lot of podcasts out there, but really, when you think about the number of people there are on this earth and then the number of podcasts there are, it's actually really quite a small proportion. And then, so what makes a woman named Katie Carey suddenly think that she might like to start a podcast?
Wow. Hey, I just happened to be scrolling through Facebook and somebody had shared a 5-day podcast challenge. And just suddenly, my soul felt that. And I thought, wow, this is something I could really do. Hold on a minute. I mean, we're in the middle of the COVID lockdown here, a couple of months into it. We started lockdown in March, and I came across this challenge in May. And I just thought, hang on a minute, this I could really do this because I had all of these all of these subjects that I'm quite knowledgeable in. I've got lots of connections, and I happen to have the right equipment sitting here because a couple of years before I'd done a radio presenting interview course. I'm losing it now. I did a radio presenting course just for the fun of it. And when I was a teenager, I'd worked in Radio 4 on radio plays as an actress. So there's a bit of audio. I loved it then. And I just thought, I've got all the right equipment. These ideas were coming to me during the challenge. And I thought, I think I need to do this. I think this is something I should do. And then I was in a business course with Joanna Hunter. And she did one of her I think it was a live energy clinic. And I said, what should I focus on? And she said, focus on the podcast. Because I had all these other ideas as well, all these coaching courses that I wanted to create. Lots of things were flying about that I'd been thinking about. But she'd said, yeah, do the podcast, because I'd already been talking about the idea. So I did.
I remember when you announced that you were going to do a podcast, and it blew my socks off because I was like, hang on, that's not part of the formula of the course we're doing. There's nowhere here on a piece of paper that says, thou shalt do a podcast. I'm like, where does that fit into it? Like, that's not part of the framework. Like, what are you doing, Katie? Like, don't you do that, you silly little girl. You'll fall off the wagon and you won't get all these other things done. Well, fool be me. Like, oh yeah, I didn't see that one coming at all. I was like, huh, like nobody I knew was doing a podcast from the business group. No one. So I was like, wow, what?
I
And
just felt it. I felt it in my soul. I really felt it, but I knew that it would be too much if I was trying to do all these other things as well. So I think Joanna saying focus on the pod, because she knew as well that I was disabled and had health issues, and because generally she doesn't say focus on one thing, does she? But she did for me. Focus on the podcast. And then I was thinking, well, how am I going to make money through the podcast? All of my income streams had stopped because of COVID. I had an eBay store, people weren't buying from. I was already using the brand name Soulful Valley though. before the podcast, because
Yes.
I'd set it up 2018, July 2018, because I had bought a self-publishing package from Balboa Press and I wanted to be an author, and because I knew that I wanted to set up a coaching business online, because I was running a charity, a mental health charity with alternative therapies, and I knew that I'd come across all of you doing things online as well, and lots of other people, and I thought I should be doing this. And so Soulful Valley had already been born, but I wasn't quite sure what I was doing with that.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
lots of
because I don't remember.
ideas.
I don't think you even had a website, did you? It was just the name, and your eBay store was Soulful Valley, wasn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. And now, to an outside observer, it looks like you could just click a button and record and launch a podcast, but it's not really that simple, is it? And I know that you did this challenge first
Yeah.
to learn about podcasting. So it's kind of like, I think, wanting to do a synchronized swimming piece before you even know how to swim. But you just jumped into the deep end and said, I shall be graceful and coordinated and synchronized, and it will work. So you have a lot of trust in yourself, which a lot of people don't have. But tell us a little bit about what's the process of even prepping to get a podcast organized. You know, you have all these ideas in your head, but it has to materialize and you have to plan. Give us a little bit of an insight into how your life changed when you went, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to become a podcaster. I'm going to use my skills, but what next? How did it affect your daily life, and what did you have to learn to do, and who did you need to reach out to? Show us a little bit of the behind the scenes on how Katie's life changed on a day-to-day basis or a monthly basis when Katie decided, I'm going to be a podcasting person.
Right. Well, first of all, I said yes to the person who ran the 5-day challenge who had a podcast membership, because
Mm-hmm.
she had videos to help with each step of the way. I know I couldn't have done it without that. It was so valuable. So I joined that membership, and I worked my way through it. And she made it so easy to follow. Like I said, I already had all the equipment. That wasn't even a problem, trying to find the right equipment, because I'd worked on a few projects with a local musician who's an engineer as well. He'd told me what equipment to get when I wanted to create meditation music for the meditations I'd planned to create, which I still haven't created yet. So it's sitting there for that, really. But yeah, so none of that was an issue. And then some people were just going in and doing, a 10-minute chat themselves. There were some people who did the podcast all by themselves. And I just thought, but I've got all these people surrounding me that know things that I think should be shared. So I started to ask the people that were around me who I could see coaching if they wanted to be a guest, like yourself. And then it just grew from there. And I've just loved those conversations and loved the wisdom and the education that was there to share. And originally I started with a script of questions, but eventually that went right out of the window because that felt too fake. It didn't feel natural. So I wanted it to be more intuitive, that, we have conversations that are quite natural. Some podcasts as well have got rules that you can't say certain things and can't ask certain questions, and you're not to plug unless you're asked and things like that. So I didn't want it to be like that, because I want to share. I want people to be sharing what they've got to put out in the world, not to hide, thinking that every time they talk about it, it's spam, which is what, some people are made to feel like that, aren't they? Have I answered your question there?
You have. But one of the things that was really interesting, Katie, to me was that, you said you were going to do this, and then you went away and you learnt the skills and you started talking to people. But there was one key thing that happened that also, expanded the size of my brain in terms of wonder, was when you launched the podcast, right? It wasn't just here we go, I'm just going to sneakily press publish and maybe one person and my mum and my aunt and my sister and my cousin down the road will listen to it. No, no, no. Katie Carey doesn't do that. Katie Carey does big launches. And you were globally ranked within a really short period of time, wasn't it?
I don't think the global ranking came that quickly, but
It felt like it.
it's just that time's gone so fast, hasn't it? But I think the first global ranking came, where are we? Earlier this, I don't know, maybe springtime.
Okay.
Because I remember, when did Joanna launch her podcast? I remember I'd reached 5%, and then I noticed that she had as well. So we were both like saying twins. We were twins. But yeah, part of the membership again taught us how to launch. So I was talking and sharing about this podcast for 8 weeks before it was launched. So it's quite a big, from when I did the challenge in May, I didn't launch until a year ago now, so late October. So I was talking about it, and I could see other people with podcasts that I knew who didn't share they weren't sharing their podcast. I was thinking, why aren't you sharing your podcast more? Why aren't you like really pushing it out there? I couldn't understand that, because I felt, it's such a great, I think it's a wonderful thing to have created. So I don't see the point on having a podcast and only my mum listening to it. My mum doesn't listen to it, but she hasn't got the tech to work that one out yet. But I don't see the point in creating something and keeping it going for this long. If you don't love it, you don't want to share it. There isn't, is there? I don't think there is.
No, there isn't, but there has to be that trust in self, and you have to need to be really comfortable with being visible, because there's one thing recording an episode where you and I are chatting and you can press publish and essentially that could be it, right? But you've been very actively promoting the podcast, and that's all about being comfortable with being visible and really pushing the energy of the podcast out there so that people can see, I'm going to stand behind my product, and my product is here to help. So I want more and more people to participate as guests, and I want people to listen to it. It's a service to everybody else, but not everybody has that confidence. And so that's one of the things that I really have enjoyed watching, is that the more episodes you've done and the more guests you've had, the more confident you've become, and the more and more that you've actually been able to naturally promote the podcast because you've really just enjoyed it. It's been really fun for you, is my sense of understanding. It's not like this must do, or marketing 101, must have a podcast, right? God, here we go again. It's not being that energy.
It definitely wasn't about that. It was about the connection of doing something, about blending all of the things that I love. I used to be an actress. I used to work in audio. I used to, all of it. It's all creative for me. And of course, I'm passionate about educating people in subjects that are going to help them mentally and emotionally. So it's all been for the love for me. I haven't, hasn't been about anything else. And I've been in a lot of podcast groups where all people are concerned about is how they're going to monetize it, and that's and you can see that they're not loving it. They're just trying to push it up the hill. But I've definitely loved it. And the thing about the visibility, I didn't like video interviews or Facebook Lives, because I have health conditions that sometimes I look like crap. I feel exhausted. Do I really want to be putting myself out on video? But what the podcast did, it gave me so much confidence that my recent series, I started doing them on video and putting the videos everywhere as well as the podcast. So it's really built my confidence in showing up regardless.
Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, Katie, I was trying to do the calculations, but it seems like there's somewhere around 74 episodes that you've done, roughly.
No, I've lost count. I saw it when it got to 67, because that's spiritually a number for me. But I've been so on it with my recent project that I've
Yes.
been putting them out, and I've lost count.
Oh, well, after this, you're going to have to go back so that and count them so that when we get to 100 episodes, you can
Oh
do
yeah,
another
I need to do
celebration.
another one. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, what I wanted to ask you about was we were talking a little bit earlier. Tell us about the stats of where the podcast has got to, because that's an interesting story as well. So,
Yeah,
stats and who's listening.
we got to globally ranked in the top 2%, which is brilliant because I've only seen other podcasters around me do that who've paid for the VIP service one to one, which I wasn't in a position to do that. I just went into the membership, or people that have, massive followings. So I was chuffed with that. And
So, Katie, what does that actually mean, the top 2%? What does that mean to somebody who's got
okay,
no idea?
the top 2% of uh, actually listened to podcasts in the world. So there's
Okay.
lots of people out there who've got podcasts that are not being listened to, but we're
Yes. It's a
ranked,
lot.
they rank from 10% upwards of who's actually being listened to and downloaded.
Yes, because there's lots of podcasts that start, get to about 7 episodes, and then they die.
Yeah, they give up.
Yeah. Yeah, give up. So active listening, so fabulous. And congratulations. And where are people tuning in from?
Well, we've got, we actually cover 6 continents. I worked out
Wow.
this morning, and we've got over 30 countries listening. But the top 5 countries in this order who listen are the USA, the UK, Germany, Australia, and New Zealand, who very recently came on to listen because of my
Okay.
recent new project.
Yeah, recent project. Yeah, fabulous. So go the Aussies and the Kiwis. We're in there as well. But how fabulous to think that a year ago you mightn't have known or dreamed that your reach could be to Australia and New Zealand because it's a long way away from where you are.
Yeah, and here's some of the other countries that's quite shocking that I've reached. Um, I'm reaching South Africa, Brazil, Vietnam, Japan. It's like whoa, lots of countries in Europe and the United Arab Emirates.
Okay, there you go.
Hmm.
So the wonders of technology, and I think that possibly I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but the whole world being in lockdown over the past little while has meant that people have been consuming podcasts more than usual, haven't they? That really needed the company and the hope and the inspiration and ideas to keep them going through an abnormal period in their life.
Absolutely, and it is another reason I did it because having run a charity around mental health, I understood how COVID and the lockdowns were affecting people mentally. So that was another thing that made me think, I need to do this. People need this. People need inspiration. People need personal development. People need, because people who've already been in this world were rocked by that. Some of us
Mm.
have been in the personal development world for years and are quite strong mentally and emotionally, but we've been rocked by it. So I felt the whole thing. I felt like it was important.
Yeah, it is. And no better way than to reach out to people when you can't physically be there to help them, and especially after your charity closing, is to be able to do something that um, you don't need to be physically present, and you don't need to distribute anything to help people. It's helping people through them listening. So it's a very powerful.
And you're not pushing stuff out like we are on social media either. People are coming to listen. They want to listen.
Mm.
So they're seeking the information, aren't they? They're seeking what we've got. So that's another thing that feels good, that I'm attracting the people who need it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that my listening has dramatically changed over the last year and a half. I here in Australia we haven't had the extent of lockdown. Well, in the state that I live in, let me put that disclaimer. I don't live in Melbourne, the most locked down city in the world, but I live in Queensland, the Sunshine State, and in Brisbane, and we really haven't had that much of a lockdown situation. So I'm still driving everywhere and what has changed for me is that I no longer even turn the radio on. I haven't turned the radio on for a long time. When I get in the car, the first thing I do is open my podcast player and I listen to a podcast wherever I'm going, because it stops for you. And if I live 2 minutes down the road from Coles, that's a supermarket, and I drive down there and I listen to an episode and stop, get out, do my grocery shopping, come back, drive 2 minutes back up the road, and I'm still catching the same episode. And it's not like, when you're listening to a song and you're right in the moment and you're like, oh. When you listen to a
Yeah.
podcast, you can pick up the train of thought there and then, and it's something that can follow you wherever you are, whatever you're doing. If you're really engrossed in the podcast, you can get out of the car and unplug your phone and then walk upstairs with the groceries still listening. And that's what I've done sometimes, is keep walking and keep listening, and then go and do what you want to do, and the podcast follows you around. So I think that a lot of people also get quite attached to the routine that podcasts provide, in terms of they establish a relationship and a sense of knowing with podcast hosts that podcast hosts may not even realize, because they're just hearing somebody's voice is a very personalized thing, isn't it? It makes you feel
Yeah.
like you are in the same room as somebody. And so when you're listening to a podcast and that podcast helps uplift you, then you develop an affinity for that person, because their voice is comfort or calming or inspiring or exciting or whatever it is. And so I think that a lot of people develop relationships of fondness to podcast hosts. Have you found that? Have you had people email you or find you on social media and tell you that they really enjoy listening?
Yeah, and I found that I do have really, really deep connections with people that I didn't have before. And just what you just said then about listening to it in the car, there's another reason as well that I think I ended up doing this, because about 4 years ago, when I was driving to work every day to the job that I hated, when I was still stuck in a relationship that was absolutely torturing me, it was podcasts that I was listening to that lifted me out of the funk that I was in. It was, there were podcasts that really, really helped me. And there weren't many people around me listening to podcasts. When I did my podcast, there were still people that weren't listening to podcasts, and I've, educated people in how to go find them, which is another
Mm.
thing I think is really important, because there's this valuable free education for people that they're not going to find in their local community, but they can tap into it, go and listen to a podcast that's really going to support them.
And the thing that I like about podcasts too is that, you're not on Facebook and being distracted by messages pinging left, right, and center to
Mm.
you, and ads and news feeds. If you go onto Facebook and you go to watch a video, or, learn something from a particular educational provider, coach, or whoever, quite often you'll go on to watch a video, and you might watch that 20-minute video, and 45 minutes later you've realized you've got side funneled down a rabbit hole, and you've ended up messaging 4 friends, and the inspiration that you were focusing in on, let me think about this for my business or personal life, has gone out the window because your mind got distracted. It wasn't focused. Whereas when you're listening to a podcast, if you're listening to a podcast and you want to take notes, you don't have anything around you. You can sit there with a pen and paper
Mm.
and your cuppa and actually sit and take notes, or really sit and immerse yourself, so you're not being distracted by the outside world. You can turn your phone on silent. And so that's why I like it, because it's really concentrated in terms of where you can focus your energy and your mind. And so I feel like you can get so much more out of a podcast than you can by going on social media.
And I really get what you're saying there, because because there's many times where I go to do something and then I think, how did I end up here? Why am I
Yeah.
here? Bring myself back to what I was supposed to be doing. But I have got a huge following on Facebook, so and I've got a lot of there's a lot of connection with me on Facebook, so it's not something that I can disappear from. Because I think that my podcast has built on Facebook as well. But it is something that I'm really trying to be more focused about, where I am, where I'm hanging out, because I'm in so many groups, and I'm still getting people messaging me to join their groups, and I just think, not really any point in me. I can't add anything more to, I can't be there. And I like to be there. I like to be present where I can be. So yeah, definitely podcasts are a great way to focus in on what it is that you're trying to learn without all of the other, because yeah, even when you're in courses on Facebook, when I think about it, you're watching everybody's comments, aren't you, and ended up interacting with the comments, and you're not really focused on what's being taught. I get
Yep. Yep.
that.
Yeah.
Another thing as
Oh,
well with podcasts is that the way I love to listen to them is if I'm washing up, doing housework, doing
yeah.
the things that you might not normally enjoy. So
Mhm.
there's podcasts that feel great to listen to when you're doing those sort of things, isn't
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Can't stand doing housework. Totally, totally a
there?
distraction. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the guests that appeared on your podcast so far. So, I want to know which guest did you never expect in your imagination would end up on your show and did, and why? Why
Oh,
did
this
you
is
never
this is
expect?
easy. I just wrote about this. Yasmin Boland, a Hay House author. I'd been following her for quite a while. She's a Hay House author. I've loved Hay House for years, and I'd started to get really serious about her moonology and her moon ceremonies when the lockdown started again in March 2020. And so I was hanging out in her groups a bit more. I'd followed her before and I'd caught the odd ceremony, but I wasn't taking it seriously. Then I started to take it seriously and I started to be in her community more. And I thought, do you know what? God, she'd be a great guest. I'm going to ask her. So I did. And she said yes. And I was shocked. It was that easy.
Yep. It's amazing sometimes if you're just bold enough to ask, the answer
Yeah.
is yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But sometimes we put
Perfect.
people on such a pedestal, don't we, that we think that they're too big or too great to be asked.
Yep. And you got your Moonology certification. Have you done
I
anything
did.
with that?
Not only personally, only for myself so far.
Yep.
Um, I do share things around, around full moons and new moons. I do put up posts on Facebook to encourage people on a full moon or a dark moon to release and let go of the things that they've been struggling with. So I do use it in sort of educationally, but I haven't been using it in the way that I was supposed to have when I actually registered for the course.
Right. Okay. And in when you look back at the guests that you've had, I know there's a lot. So, which can you think of which guests provided you insights into your own life that have been really helpful that perhaps you didn't even expect gave you insights? So from the conversations that you had with them.
Oh wow. Can it be a conversation I had with someone who's given me a lot of insights on the episode and out of the episode?
Sure. Sure.
Joanna Hunter,
Okay. Yep. Mhm. Yep.
because the stuff I've learned from her has quite literally changed my life.
Yep. And that's an ongoing relationship, so that's great because you're involved in her world, she's involved in your world, so
Mm.
it's it's not a fly by the seat of your pants, seat of the night kind of relationship. It's a
No,
long
it
term
really means
relationship.
something to me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. And which episode, if you can think back, was difficult to produce in terms of the universe kept mucking you around, or you tried to record it in a Mercury retrograde or something like that? Do you have any interesting, quirky stories about things that almost went wrong that got
I've
saved at the
had
last
I've
moment?
had a
Or
few of them. Seriously, I've had episodes where one happened last week with one of my authors. We'd we'd arranged the interview and she couldn't get in. And I said to her, because this has happened a few times now, I said to her, well, there's bound to be a reason. Something else is going to happen when we come off of here, when we give up trying. And then 5 minutes later, a poem flowed through me, or a piece of writing that I ended up sharing that felt profound and important to share. So It was like, okay, that was the reason. There was another time where I couldn't get into Zoom my side. And when I looked at my phone, there was a chanting session going on. And I felt called to chanting. So I ended up in this chanting session that I wouldn't have been in had it not happened. There's just things that happen all the time. So I don't care anymore when the tech goes wrong, because I know that there's a bigger purpose for the tech going wrong, and it's okay. Other people might not
Perfect.
realize that when sometimes, I have to cancel because of, and it might be irritating for the guests, but I always know that, that there is a bigger reason, so I don't feel bad about it.
Good, good. Well, it's good because it means also that you haven't let technology be a reason to get in the way. You know, a lot of people will go, "Oh God, if it does this one more time, it's a sign that it's not meant to be."
And it used to be, technology used to be the thing that's held me back. I've always been into technology. I bought my first computer when I was 1991, but some of the systems that we've got now are so great, aren't they? But they don't always work the way they're supposed to. So I have
That's
had,
right.
I have had to work on being irritated with tech over the last year. But it doesn't bother me now when I'm creating landing pages and all sorts of things that before I was scared of. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing with email lists. But I'm quite comfortable with all of that now.
That's fabulous. It's fabulous. Okay, another question for you. What has podcasting taught you about yourself and your life?
Oh, wow. I didn't used to be so vocal about things. I used to hide.
Okay.
I used to hide my beliefs and thoughts and the spiritual woo side of myself, especially
Yep.
when even though I was running a charity that was dealing with, that we were doing alternative therapies, there was still an element of me that felt like, to be taken seriously, I had to go study that degree that had psychology and the science of the mind
Mm-hmm.
in mental health and all of those other things, because I felt like I wouldn't be taken seriously. I think as well, because there was a time, times when I've been called weird because I went off to a meditation class. So there were things, that was a boss at work, in the
Right.
workplace where they held the
Okay.
meditation.
Oh, okay.
Bizarre. But so there were, I used to listen too much to other people's opinions. And
Mm.
now I don't give a flying hoop.
Yep. Mhm. That's great. And I think that it's easy to care what other people think.
Yeah.
And I think it's very human to worry about being seen as weird, being weird. But I think that the more that you embrace your weirdness, the more you allow your true self to come out, and the more enjoyment you get out of life, because you realize that it's just about finding other people who are the same kind of weird as you are.
And look how many weird people have attracted into my world. Isn't it awesome? There are so
That's
many of us
right.
all over the world.
You're such a weirdo, Katie. Embrace it, embrace it. Now, I have to ask you, one of the things that a lot of people wouldn't know, because on social media and right now we just see from the chest upwards, is that you have had your ability impacted. So you call yourself disabled in the current introduction to the podcast. Let us know, how has, and the answer might be not at all, how has your disability impacted upon your ability to create the podcast? And what is your advice to others who might like to start a podcast but think they can't because they're disabled?
I've had to really, really be aware and careful of my energy and how I feel, and when I'm exhausted, not to push myself. So there have been weeks when I haven't showed up on the day I was supposed to, and that's been okay. I've had to let that be okay. And I've had to also, there have been times when I packed my diary too much with interviews, and I've realized, this is too much. I can't do this. Other people may be able to do this. I can't do this. So
Mm,
I took it back to only doing a maximum of 2 interviews a week, so that, because obviously it's not
okay.
just the interview, it's the editing. And I don't
Mm,
like to give that to anyone else to do either, because I like to edit I really enjoy editing. I enjoy sitting and listening to the conversation again. Because when you're part
Yeah,
of it,
yep.
you don't always remember what was said. So I enjoy that, and the process of putting that together. So I can't make it too much for myself, but equally, I don't want, you know, what I have got physically going on put me off of dreaming and creating and feeling this wonderful about my life, because I wasn't ready to roll over and die. I knew there was stuff inside of me that's needed to come out.
Way too young for that anyway.
Exactly. I was ill health retired at 47, 48, 48, just as I was graduating with my degree. So, I wasn't ready to give up. I'd only just built all of that.
Yep, yep, yep. And the good thing about podcasting is like it's got no age definition to it. You know, thou shalt
So,
not need to retire because you hit retirement age.
well, I heard something the
Podcasting,
other day planning for retirement, and I thought, you know what? I think I'm building something that I don't ever want to retire from. I'm quite excited
yeah.
about what I'm building at the moment, and I think that when you're doing something that you love, you're not even looking at that.
No, I think it's a very job centric concept, retirement, isn't
Mm.
it?
Well, I think as well,
It's
because I was forced into that thing of being
mm,
retired early.
mm,
I didn't want that. When people retire, don't they give up and die?
yeah. Yeah. Mm, no. Okay, so I have a couple of more questions, and then we're going to move on to the most exciting stuff at the moment. But I wanted to ask you the top 5 things, if you can come up with 5, for top 5 pieces of advice for people who either would like to start their own podcast or be a guest on a podcast. What would you
I'm
what
going to
would your
say
advice
number
be to them?
one, go and find Anna Parker Naples, who is an absolutely brilliant podcasting coach, and she knows what she's doing. She's got books out. Go and find her books, and she's got a free community. Go and find that. Look at what she has to offer, because I don't think I would have done it this well if I hadn't have had that start with her. If I'd have just,
Mm-hmm.
DIY'd it. Number two, don't skimp out with your equipment. Get some decent, good quality equipment. Number three, trust yourself and and do it because you love it. Don't do it if you feel like it's a chore. I don't think you should even be doing it. If it's a chore and it's just another marketing tool you're adding on and you really feel icky about it, don't do it. Because it will be too much. You will add too much to your plate. You've got to love this to do it. Was that three?
Yeah, I think that's 3. Yep.
Excuse me. I got a frog.
So, what about for somebody wants to be a guest?
If you want to be a guest, when you, I mean, for me, I've got a lot of people in my email. I've got hundreds of emails that I haven't even managed to get to. So if you're if you want to be on someone's podcast, get to know them in their community first, so that number one, you stand out and they notice you, because in the sea of people that are sending in emails and similar things, or not even, a lot of people will ask to be on the podcast but not send you anything, no links, no
Right.
podcast. You can't connect with the podcaster first, connect with them on all of their social medias, learn, get to know who they are and what sort of stuff they're put, because there's also people who ask to be on the podcast who are not right for the podcast. So,
Mm-hmm.
go and make sure you've listened. Don't just copy and paste a message saying that you've listened. Actually listen to a couple of episodes to get the feel and know that it's something that fits with you, because there's no point in being on a podcast that doesn't even fit with what you do.
Absolutely.
Number 5. Is there anything else? Is there anything I've missed? I don't think I can.
That's all right. Perfect. Great tips. So, let's move on to this week's exciting news. We have for those who are watching the video version of this, you can see my screen. I have on my phone Evolving on Purpose, Mindful Ancestors Paving the Way for Future Generations. Katie launched her multi-author book. And Katie, congratulations. Holy smokes. Tell us the results.
Oh, wow. Well, we got #1 bestseller in 10 categories in Australia, in 4 categories in the UK, 3 categories in the USA, and 1 in Canada. We also, in all of those countries, had #1 new release. And the new releases as well, best #1 new release, were in a category in Germany and 1 in France. So in total, we had 18 #1 bestsellers and 25 #1 new releases, which is way more than I expected and phenomenal. Wonderful. So happy. And I'm so happy that I just helped 20 people become international best-selling authors. That's the sort of cream on the top for me.
Yeah, and you help them not just in one country, in one category.
It's like whoa.
How many countries would you like? Here, let me give you a sticker for each one, and you've got stickers. You know, like how they have on the wine bottles, and they get the gold medal at the such and the London Wine Show. Well, this is like your wine bottle is just littered all over with stickers. It's like
I think the funny thing is as well, you know, when I was approaching people to be in this book, some people are, how can you say you're going to make me a best-selling author? I was like, I know. And that's probably because I knew I was going to launch it in a similar way to the way I launched the podcast. And I wasn't going to be scared about talking about it. And I've been talking about it since the name first, the title of the book dropped into me on a Divine Downloads course with Joanna Hunter. Another reason that I love the woman, because that landed on me in her course. And I had to do something with it. And that was in April. So I've been talking about it since April.
I do remember when you got those downloads.
Yeah, people were coming in to ask me, where can I buy the book? And it wasn't ready yet.
Hold that thought.
So I think people have been searching Amazon for it long before it was even on there.
But it's not a simple task, is it? You've had to learn how to do this. So it takes time and investment, again, just like a podcast, where you've had to learn the formula for it's you don't just suddenly wake up tomorrow and think, I'm going to do a multi-author book. You've got to learn how to do that first, don't you? So it's, again, another learning thing this year. Your neural networks in your brain have just been firing, rewiring, and learning all new skills. And there seems to be quite a science in terms of understanding where exactly to list these books in categories and how to actually create a community that brings together and creates excitement around a book launch, so that it's not just we launched today and nobody buys it. So it's quite a technical thing that you've put together.
And I was quite I really chose the categories. I chose the categories that I knew that we would be proud to be #1 in as well. There are some brilliant categories there. The 10 categories in Australia, in particularly, neuropsychology and just parenting and emotional wellness and mental health and substance abuse, and just really important categories that I knew we'd all be proud of. So yeah, there was quite a lot that went into it.
And how are your authors? How are they?
Oh, they're all so excited. I think we're all a bit exhausted because the launch. If I was just launching a book in the UK, it would just be in the UK. But the launch started for me on Thursday at 9 p.m. because it was 9 a.m. in Australia the next day already. So we were all so excited that we were up all hours.
I was going to say, did you actually sleep?
It went across 2 days. I think I slept for 4 hours the first night, because I didn't want to. It was doing really well, and I just I didn't want to leave the because there was only 2
Yeah.
Australian authors and 3 in New Zealand as well, so I didn't want to leave them. But equally, then I thought, Amazon refreshes every 3 hours. I can't. It was 1:30 when I decided to go to bed. 1:30, 2 o'clock. I thought I can't wait another 3 hours for it to refresh. I'm going to trust this and go to sleep. And then I woke up to find that we had number 1 in 10 categories, which was a brilliant way to wake up before we'd even launched in the UK or the rest of Europe.
Yeah, I love the fact that you went to sleep and it did its work.
Yeah,
Like, isn't that the
yeah.
definition of? I know, because also I was getting the emails. I'd be like, "Oh, here comes another country, and here comes another country." And, Katie, are you sleeping, Katie? Because I'm getting like emails here in Australia from you, as each country launches, and I'm thinking, "Holy smokes, the woman's not gone to bed." But how can she? Because you're launching in all these different countries. I was like, "Wow!" Like, I didn't know the whole vision was in all these different markets that you're going to
Yeah,
launch. I knew
yeah.
I knew the UK, and obviously I knew Australia and New Zealand because of the contributing authors, but I didn't see the bigger
That's
picture
what
again.
makes
So
this really different as well, because generally someone would go and just launch on .com or .co.uk, but this is a very different model. And because it's great if you've got authors in some of those countries as well, because they haven't,
mm,
they haven't just got it in their own country, they've got it internationally. So it, the confidence that it gives them as well, because they've done it now. So those who've wanted to be authors for a long time, it's a great first step, isn't it? First step, you're an international best-selling author. Now go create whatever you want.
yeah, hello, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not like most people start with a self-published book that they buy 400 copies of it and they're forever handing them out for the next 15 Christmases.
And I have invited people who have been authors who I've seen who I know have put several books out that are absolutely brilliant and just aren't seen or bought by enough people, that I don't think quite understood. Maybe I wasn't clear about it, or maybe maybe they needed to see me do it first.
Oh yeah, I think some people have to see it
Yeah,
to believe it.
yeah, yeah.
Some people are very much at the believe and then you see, but other people are very much no.
And I knew
I need
because
to.
I'd already done it in intuitive
Mm,
knowing her truth when that opportunity came for me. So I saw how it worked, and it was brilliant. So when the opportunity came to train and be a publisher and book titles started to drop in, it that was a no-brainer.
yeah, absolutely. And is the next step for a physical book, or will it
No,
remain as
there's a
an ebook?
paperback. There will be a paperback
Paperback.
in
Yep.
3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, perfect. And there's another book as well, just because
There is.
you
There
in
is. Wow,
case you were
there
busy
will
enough.
be 2 more multi-author books, because I've got one called Entangled No More, which is around toxic relationships. So people who have experienced toxic relationships, but not just romantically, toxic
Mm,
relationships with their family, friends, bosses, with money, and the biggest one, where it all starts with the self. So
mm,
I want people now who will come in and share stories who have overcome these experiences and understand how they've attracted. I've had it all. I've had all all of these going on in my life. So I
mm.
want I want people now who can come in and write a chapter, who can educate. There's a lot of people who suffer from and toxic relationships is a big thing that people are talking about, isn't it? So there's a lot of people out there that could do with reading a book like this to understand where it's come from.
And the key of all that is if you have a toxic relationship with yourself, you're sending out a toxic vibration to everyone else, and so you can't help but attract other toxic people
And
into your
until you
life.
learn about energy and how your feelings uh, attract everything in your world, then there's not a lot you can do to change it.
Mm.
It's very, very deep work.
Mm, absolutely, yeah. You've got to go right to the core of the issues. So it's a lot of the dark, shadowy work. And hello, we're in Scorpio season, so perfect time to start thinking about going into the depths of your soul and looking at why you are the way you are and how to bring to the light the wounds of self. So perfect. Now, I could talk to you all night about all of the projects, but I'm sure that people have heard so far so much that it's time to say you've got so much coming on in the works. There's will always be lots of projects with Carey and Soulful Valley coming on in the works. The website, I think, and the Facebook is going to be the number one way that they can stay in touch with you, other than the podcast, which they're listening to already. But to really keep coming back and listening to the podcast and going to the website, because there's always going to be something happening with Soulful Valley, right?
Absolutely. This is going nowhere. It's like I will not be walking away from it. This is my baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's not the next one, it'll be the one after that, or maybe you'll be interested in a doing your own book. I think you're going to be
I
doing
am. I am
solo
starting
books.
a solo author group project, and I'm doing it in February because it would be my nan's 100th birthday on the 11th of February. And my nan, Violet, has been she was my inspiration as a teenager. She supported me a lot with the things that I got to do that were really unusual for a girl from my background. And she has supported me in spirit ever since she left this world 19 years ago yesterday. So it's all in honor of her.
Perfect, beautiful. Well, in honor of your nan, then I think I will hand back to you now and say my job is done to congratulate you for 1 year of fabulousness with Soulful Valley and wishing you all the very best for the next 12 months. I can't wait to see what releases itself to your mind and what you concoct up and imagine, because I'm sure there's stuff that is going to come into your world that you haven't even imagined yet, and we'll all enjoy watching it as it unfolds, and I'll be here going,
What's she doing
Katie.
now? Following her dreams.
It's brilliant. Like, why be boring? Be unpredictable, because that's where the exciting stuff happens. Once again, Katie, congratulations on the first birthday of Soulful Valley podcast, and congratulations on the ridiculous success of your latest book.
Thank you so much, Katische. Bye for now.
Thank you.